All right, Ted Warriors. Hi again. My eyes feel really, well, no, my left eye feels really bad today in comparison to how it used to feel. It used to feel perfect, and over the last month or so, it's degraded. But I'm not really here to talk to you about my Graves' disease. By the way, the reason I lean my head back just is because this eye doesn't want to point up. So I got to lean back so that I can see out of both eyes and I don't see double vision. If I go like this, like just like that, I mean, the screen's about, what, an arm length away from me, and the images are about that far apart. So they're about that far apart. So maybe so it's about 30 inches away from me, and this images in my brain, you know, when I look straight at try to look straight at the screen, are about 4 inches apart, and they're offset this direction. So about that far apart. So it doesn't work. So I lean my head back and I can see the screen. So anyway, I'm actually here today to do a video I've been putting off for a while. And basically it's about Graves' disease and the COVID vaccination. So most of the time I talk about thyroid eye disease, but you know, I got the thyroid eye disease from Graves' disease. You get Graves' disease first, and 10, 15, 20% of people that get Graves' disease start having eye issues. And I got them pretty good. So, you know, I've been wondering what's the relationship. And anyway, so let me give you a little background so that you understand where I'm coming from, and just the way I try to think about this stuff is that, you know, I was, when I did my career, I worked for 28 years in the semiconductor industry, running some of the biggest projects around. And my job for pretty much all 28 years, due to the nature of our business, and what I did there was to design experiments, execute experiments, review the results, and make the big decisions on what to do based on the experiments. So I have a lot of experience with experiments and interpreting results and that sort of thing. If I got nothing else, I got that, okay? And I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy ever or anything like that, but I had a pretty darn good record of results, let's just say, at the end of the day. So, all right, let's start this way. When I first got COVID, when I got COVID, I never really got COVID. When I got Graves' disease and thyroid eye disease, you know, my first thought was, well, that was just random. I mean, people get Graves and thyroid eye disease on a regular basis. In fact, if you read the literature, it's like 0.5% to 1% to 2 or 3% of people have Graves' disease. And I think the way it works, and the reason there's so many different numbers, and people aren't as precise as they should be when they're quoting these things, is a lot of people get Graves' disease and never figure that out because it's not that bad. So like, let's just say half the people that have Graves' disease don't even know it. So I think that's the difference between where you get some people saying 0.5%, some people saying 1%, some people saying 2 or 3. I'm just going with, when I think about all this stuff after I've read through everything, is my assumption is it's like 1%, 1 out of 100. A lot of the people will say 1 out of 200 people have Graves' disease, but I kind of think that's the number of known people with Graves' disease versus the people that have Graves' disease and don't even know about it. All right. So when this thing started, I just thought, well, I just randomly got Graves' disease. I didn't want to be this vaccine denier sort of person. You know, that wasn't kind of my thing. I read the book about the 1917 pandemic, and a lot of people obviously didn't read that book, and that was a scary book. It scared me for a long time. So I thought maybe I had some inside information, and we were headed for really bad time with COVID. And not that I was worried about myself so much, because I'm healthy, relatively young, 60, right? But on the more healthy side than most people. So I wasn't so worried about myself, but I did think bad things were going to happen. So when they come out with the vaccine, I did want to try to be kind of like fair to everybody and take it, even though, well, now I regret it, but even though if you thought about it at the time, which I did, not taking the vaccine was a better play in the sense that I wouldn't risk issues with myself. But I did do it anyway. So when I got Graves' disease, at first I just said, well, I just randomly got it. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. And I just kind of left it at that. But then I read an article, I don't know, towards the end of 2021, and I'm going to show it to you guys here. So if you guys want to read it, you can. All right. There's the title. I won't read it. 2 cases of Graves' disease. Anyway, this was, to me, the most interesting article that there was. And what they did, and unfortunately, it would cost me $51 to actually download the whole article here. And I'm not going to do that. I'm cheap that way. But I did read it a long time ago. And basically what they did was they took nurses that were in the hospitals and they tested them before and after the vaccine, in the sense that they drew blood and they tested them for all kinds of stuff, including thyroid levels. And 2 of the nurses in this study immediately after getting the shot, developed Graves' disease. And this, again, back to my experience as an experiment, this is a real experiment. This has a lot of precision to it. They're fine. They take the shot. Within a couple days, they have Graves' disease via the blood test. There's no doubt about it. This is the #1 experiment done that proves that Graves can be caused by COVID. And you can't forget this one. And I think when I read through a lot of the other papers, people just ignore this, which is a big mistake because this experiment is rock solid where a lot of the other ones aren't. So anyway, they conclude in this thing, Graves' disease can be caused after COVID-2 vaccination. So if you go to this article and then you ask for related articles, you get all kinds of stuff. All right, this is just another one. I'm not going to read the title. You can look it up if you want. COVID-19, this is the conclusion, or actually the conclusion of in the abstract. COVID-19 vaccines, either the mRNA or the non-mRNA-based ones, can cause Graves' disease. Boom, another one. Here's another one. I actually printed this one out and I didn't get the article. I just got the conclusion. Sorry about that. To our knowledge, the overall incidence of Graves' disease after COVID-19 vaccination is very low. Thus, the benefit of immunization outweighs the risk. The clinicians must be vigilant for diagnosis of hyperthyroidism, including Graves' disease, in patients presenting with overactive thyroid signs after recent COVID-19 vaccinations. Again, they're saying that there can be a cause. All right, here's another one. Sorry, this is kind of like repetitive, but this is another one, different people. We propose that the temporal relationship between administration of the vaccine and the onset of symptoms establishes Graves' disease as an adverse event after the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. Another one. All right, one more. This one kind of makes me a little mad, so that's why I wanted to do this one. All right, again, you can find this article. This is in the conclusions. Clinicians need to be aware of the risk of new onset or reoccurrent GO. I don't know exactly what it is, but GO in capitals is some sort of variant of, or some sort of presentation of Graves' disease. Sorry. Clinicians need to be aware of the risk of new onset or recurrent GO in predisposed patients with autoimmune thyroid diseases after COVID-19 vaccination. All right, saying the same thing, different words. This study should not raise any concerns regarding SARS-CoV-2 vaccination, since the risk of COVID-19 undoubtedly outweighs the incidence of uncommon GO after SARS-CoV-2 vaccinations. Well, I mean, that might be for the general population, but it's not for everybody. And that's what really makes me mad, right? If they would just explain that Graves can be caused by the vaccine, one, we could watch out for it. Two, the people that are predisposed to this genetically, and some people will know because they had parents that had Graves' disease, they can be more careful with the vaccine. Either they can not take it, or they can immediately get tested for Graves' disease. And by the way, if I would have got immediately tested for Graves' disease, it's easy to take care of Graves' disease. You take these stinking methimazole I take 3 of them a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and my blood levels are perfectly fine. I would have never gotten thyroid eye disease. So why not, as doctors and as, the CDC, tell the truth and let us take care of ourselves? It's bullshit, all right? And obviously it makes me mad. Sorry about that. All right, so again, I'll go back to articles for a second. I won't read any more, but, oops, am I holding this upside down? If you go and you ask for similar articles as that first one I did, you get, this is page 1 of 13, and each page has 10 articles. So that's 130 articles that have things talking about how Graves' disease can be triggered by the COVID vaccinations. It's all over the place, all right? Now, the one thing I will say is that there's a lot of recent articles where people are trying to pull out this relationship when looking at large data sets and having a hard time pulling out the signal. Again, we're talking about like 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200 people that get Graves' disease. This vaccine-induced Graves' disease, in my opinion, from looking at the data, is somewhere between half of that and a tenth of that. So let's just say it's 1 out of 100 people develop Graves' disease just in their lives. We don't even really know what the environmental factors that are triggering it. But I think this COVID thing, from all the data I've looked at, is about a half to a tenth of that. So that would be 1 out of 200 or 1 out of 1,000. Somewhere in that range are the amount of people that are getting Graves' disease from this COVID shot. So that, again, that's 0.5% to 0.1%. And trying to tease that out of the data is just not going to be easy. And I read a lot of papers, the recent ones, where people are looking at the big data sets and they're saying we're looking at the data sets and we can't see the signal. And when I look at the way they've done it, I just say you wouldn't see the signal. It's too small. So they conclude that there's no issues, and I say bullshit. And it is bullshit. So, all right. With me, let me talk about myself in this thing. The closer in time that the Graves' disease presents itself, and when you get the shot, your COVID vaccination, the more likely it is that you got the Graves' disease from the shot, all right? So if you got COVID vaccination and it was 2 years later and you got Graves' disease, it probably wasn't because of the vaccination. But if you get the COVID shot and you get the vaccination, you get the COVID shot and then you get Graves' disease in a month or two, more likely than not, and I'll say more likely not, meaning that more likely than 50%, you got that from the vaccination. I think it's somewhere between, 50 to 90% likely that if you get Graves' disease or if you get Graves' disease within a couple months after getting the COVID vaccination, somewhere between 50 and 90. I'm calling mine 90%. It lines up perfectly. It lines up perfectly with when I got my second vaccine. By the way, from the data I've read through, it can be the first or the second vaccine that triggers this thing. When I took my second one, that's when I got the real violent reaction. I felt terrible. The first one was like nothing. And that's when I think, obviously, I got the Graves' disease. But the closer together those things are, the more chance you are of being caused by the COVID vaccination. I'm over 50% for sure. I actually believe it's more like 90% just because of how well it lines up. I know I didn't have Graves' disease for a long time before I got that shot, because the one thing that Graves' disease does that I got data points on is it gives you high blood pressure. When I had my eye issues, because I actually went in for the eye swelling, I didn't know I had Graves, but when they tested me for my blood pressure, it was way high. And I looked at that and go, my blood pressure is never like this. Now, unfortunately, I don't take my blood pressure every week. I do have a blood pressure machine. I take my blood pressure when I go down to my sister's house. I know that I didn't have high blood pressure the time before I tested for Graves. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how long ago that was, but probably, for sure, within 6 months, maybe within a month or two, but I'm not really sure. Anyway, again, I think I got Graves' disease from the COVID shot. All right, one last thing, and I'll end this painfully long video, and I apologize for that, was this morning I got up and I don't know why I started thinking about ChatGPT, but I thought, well, I'm going to open this thing up and try to figure out how to use it. And I did. It's actually not as hard as I thought. If you go on the internet, like to an engine, and just type in ChatGPT, it gets you to a place where you can ask the little AI some questions. So I asked it if the COVID vaccination could possibly trigger the Graves' disease. And this is what it says. There is currently no evidence to suggest that the COVID-19 vaccine can trigger Graves' disease. Graves' disease is an autoimmune disorder in which the body's immune system attacks the thyroid gland, resulting in hyperthyroidism. The exact cause of Graves' disease is unknown, but it's thought to be a combination of genetic and environmental factors. All right, well, that's bullshit. There's currently no evidence to suggest that they're related. Wrong. There's evidence. Very strong experiment. Nurses tested before, nurses tested after getting the vaccine. Nurses immediately after the vaccine, within days, have Graves. All right, so wrong answer, ChatGPT. It goes on to say, while vaccines can sometimes trigger an autoimmune response, there is currently no evidence to suggest that the COVID-19 vaccination specifically can trigger Graves' disease. Wrong again. I don't know why they say the same thing twice. Then they go on to say, in fact, the COVID-19 vaccine has been shown to be safe and effective in preventing COVID-19 and its associated complications. Well, that wasn't what my question was about, but that's what the message they want to give you. It's safe. It's not safe. It's not safe for everybody. And for sure, if you have a predisposition to Graves' disease, meaning that you have a family that has it, if you get the vaccine, monitor your blood pressure to make sure that it doesn't spike immediately. And if it does, go to the doctor immediately, get your thyroid levels tested, and address it immediately so that you don't get thyroid eye disease. How hard is that? It's not hard. Just say it. That's what people need to do. All right? All right, that's it, folks. Sorry for being long and painful. Bye-bye.